right. So we got a lot to talk about today. We actually have a camera now on, Rick, so everybody can
Yeah,
see
here
who's
we are.
talking.
Yep. Put a face to the voice.
Exactly. So very good. Let's dive right into NASCAR this week. Phoenix. So short track, 1 mile track with a strange turn 3 and 4. Great race this week. I mean, obviously it's better than super speedway and road racing, in my opinion. Anyways, we're back to kind of the NASCAR roots. The season
Right.
begins here, right?
Yes. Yeah. I was surprised at how good the racing has been at Phoenix with this new layout. And the I guess the talk of the week is the tire options that these drivers have had on these mile-long raceways. So this is the first time the biggest track they've tried to do it at. So it made for a very interesting race.
Yeah, I think last time was North Wilkesboro in the All Star, right? So they tried it when there wasn't points, and I mean, good place to try it first go, right? It's just, hey, this is
Right.
just exhibition kind of. Obviously, there's money for the winners and everything, but now we're doing it in points racing, and obviously, so qualifying, everybody has to use the same. William Byron gets the pole. After winning the Daytona 500, he takes the green and leads a lap, and now he has led every single race this season so far, which is unheard of.
Yeah, it's the Byron Bell show this year.
So
Logano's
far.
been up there too, but he had that early race penalty for that yellow line, just barely over it on one of those early restarts.
Logano did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that was. I mean, it was so close, but I get NASCAR's position. It's like, well, we can't. You give them an inch, they take a mile, right? And so you can't you got to call it by the rules. But it's like he didn't get any advantage, he didn't get anything, and it set him back for the whole race. But I mean, he did it. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, Logano's one of those drivers that's always right at the heels of Byron and Bell this season, but all the Penske cars really, but it's really been the Byron Bell show for the first 4 races now. It's been incredible. You don't normally see domination like this, at least not since Jimmy Johnson era.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was interesting that Logano's always trying to get that edge. You know what I mean? All drivers are, but it was interesting to hear his radio too, because he was like, what are you talking about? It was nothing, if anything, and it's like, so he didn't even realize it, didn't even try. I think it was just a mental lapse. Like, they were told, obviously, in the driver meeting, right? Like, you can't dip down there before. They had to tell him, right? It's just, It's unique to this track, and they addressed it. But,
or it's just like trying to get a fast lap. You got to be up against the wall as close as you can.
Yeah, and I just think he just had a lapse in focus. He was focused on getting near that wall, right? Because they were going right up next to that inner wall coming off the pits. He was like, let's just get right there. I got to get there. And his eyes are pointed there, and he went there and didn't even realize, hey, I haven't crossed the line yet. And didn't get advantage, but man, it cost him. It really cost him.
Absolutely.
Going to the tire option thing. So, and then he ended up you saw him and other guys that if they got a speeding penalty or if they got some issue early in the race, what they ended up doing was going to the softer compound to get all that back.
Right. Like Priest did it to great effect.
Yes.
Who else? Logano did it at one point.
I'm trying to think. There was a couple of other guys. Ty Dillon. Ty Dillon did it. He was when the 10 car. He was. I think he's in the 10 this year. Anyways, he flew through the field with it. The problem I have with that strategy, and we'll get into the tire option itself and everything, but the problem I have with the strategy by itself to be like, okay, now I got to use these tires to get back up to the field, is I feel like you shot too quick. Like Logano had a very fast car. If he hadn't had taken the red tires then, he could have driven past a ton of cars in that second stage. A ton of them.
With his regular harder compound tire, right?
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, he could have.
And then, okay, now I've made it back to 15th, let's say, right? And now I still got both of my reds in the tank. And now I'm still on par with these guys. I can still get myself a top 10 here. But using it early, like a couple guys did, really set them back. And he was one of the higher ones that you just saw him kind of drop at the end because he didn't have that. So I'm not sure that was the right strategy. I know why people were doing it, but it's almost like you took a short-term gain for a long-time loss.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, I'm surprised some of these guys didn't, maybe some of these teams qualify in the back. Why didn't, or were you mandated to start on the harder compound? Because you could potentially start the race in this hard compound, get way up there. But I think the issue with some of these alternate strategies is there weren't enough sets of tires to go around. I think you only had 2 of each, something like that.
It was 4 regular and 2 red.
Okay, so if they could have thrown an extra red into the mix, I think we would have seen even more differing strategy, and it could have made it that much more interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there weren't enough red tires. It's like you basically got to use your cheat code once or twice, and that's it. So
that kind of lends to the question, though, right? Like, okay, so if they have a bunch of red tires, then that's all they're going to use. Right, the whole race. That's it. Now we did see Logano was able to go 50 plus laps on the red tire, right? So, in my opinion, it's like, okay, if you can do that, if you can go that many laps,
yeah.
Here's the thing, I'm saying if you can go that many laps and then it starts to fall off, I want the red tire full time all the time.
Of course, at that track though. So if we, I would love to see this sort of racing at all sorts of tracks. And it just got my mind going. Like, what I know, the soft tire really worked at Phoenix, but what if we go to a highly abrasive surface like Dover or something and did this tire compound thing? Maybe the longer lasting, harder compound would be the preferred tire, and you wouldn't really know, especially in the era of limited practice. So that can make it really interesting if maybe we go to different tracks with this setup too. And other series do multiple compounds, but they do it at road courses. Even IndyCar, they have alternate and primary tires for the road courses, but on the ovals, everyone's on the same compound. They don't do this. So I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but this may be the first time that motorsports has kind of tried to play with multiple sets of tire compounds on oval courses. Makes for huge advantages.
Well, if you say 2 different compounds, then you have to include the wet tire, which has been used in Xfinity. So they have done it, but to this extent, a different type of slick. This is the first time. But the reason that I say I want to see it all the time is because so NASCAR's whole thing, their whole thing about this new car is like, and all these mandated parts. Okay. Which, all the steering issues we've had, we need to think about that manufacturer. Side note.
Right.
But, okay, so what they've tried to do is make the cars so similar that it really just comes down to the driver. Okay. They want to make it about drivers. And I get that. I'm for that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm for that. I think the tire compound, it makes it such that you're going to see
sorry, we got a dog attack over here.
I know. You're going to see like even more of the drivers who can drive more carefully, who can save tires, who so that fall off isn't so significant, because let's face it, those tires don't last as long as a fuel tank. They just don't. And so I think that if you run that kind of compound, and obviously there's going to have to be work here, right? Like there's going to be a different soft compound for each track. Like you mentioned, the old concrete tracks are going to destroy tires. And so, you're going to need a little bit harder there, just like their regular slicks are a little bit harder there than they are, say, at Arizona or Phoenix.
Absolutely.
So I think if that's the spirit of what you want to do, then absolutely put the tire management in the hands of the drivers as well, because right now with our regular compound, these tires are, you could run 2 fuel runs on them and it's it's not an issue. But this makes it an issue, and that's why this Phoenix race was so exciting.
Yes. And I was kind of thinking along those lines too. It's like, if this tire management thing is something that NASCAR is looking for, then what do we need alternate compounds during a race anyway? We can just put everyone on this red soft tire, and we got everyone on this level playing field. But then the speed comes from driver ability, tire saving,
tire management. And I guess the thing is if you're going to say, well, let me just say this. I understand that NASCAR is going to need time with this, because what you don't want is drivers constantly blowing tires. Or do you? Because it's going to be the guys that couldn't hold that just, went all balls out, you know what I mean? The first 20 laps
or aggressive setups. Yeah.
Yeah. And those are going to be the guys that have blowouts and destroy their cars. So, I mean, I think it was a great introduction, a great first race for points racing with those tires. I want to see more of it. I really hope NASCAR incorporates it into a lot more of the racing.
Yeah. I want to see it at different types of tracks if we decide to go that route. If not, just bring the softest compound available and let them tear through them, But if we got to have multiple compounds, I want to see it at all the different types of tracks, concrete, faster, maybe somewhere like Michigan. I don't know, maybe that medium tire or harder tire lasts longer around a place like Michigan, something like that.
It might. And then there's tracks like I would say super speedways. You probably don't need to worry about that there. It's not a tire game. That's not what it's about. So, but I think on all the other tracks, take Daytona, Talladega, Atlanta out of it, all the other tracks, including road courses, it would be really good for Goodyear to develop a compound that would fall off and is about 15 laps short of a run,
right?
And see what drivers are good at management and what drivers are not.
Yep. Every tire that's down, every race that's down to tire management has ended up being a thriller. I mean, Bristol, when they brought the wrong compound, everyone was tearing through them.
Yes, that was great.
That was one of my favorite races ever.
Yes.
So more of it. Give me more. I love it.
Yeah. The racing itself was I'll be honest, because I'm there, I'm taking my notes for the podcast. And it was hard to keep up with. It's like, okay, who's on red tires? Who's on yellow tires? Why is this person's only up here because they've already used their set, so they're not actually going to be a player. I mean, there was a lot to think about and a lot going on.
Absolutely. I mean, putting the reds on when everyone else is on the yellows was a cheat code. I mean, look at Priest starting like 30th, 20th, buried in the field, drives all the way to the front and is able to stay up there. Logano did it too. I think the tire differences were huge. It probably gave the people on alternate strategies too much of an advantage at certain points. So that's why I was saying, if you got 3 sets of reds or the soft compound, you could mix up the strategy even more. You could potentially start the race on the reds, if you had a bad qualifying position. So it was huge. And to be able to drive what's usually a mid-pack car, like some of these guys, and be able to just drive it to the front because you're simply on a different tire, I think that might be a little much in my opinion, but it made for some fun slice and dice through the field.
Well, some great racing, great times for certain guys, like Ty Dillon, for example, when he did it early. He probably had the ride of his life. You know what I mean? He had the most fun he's ever had in a cup car because he's just flying by these big name guys, and
right.
It had to feel great. It's like, man, I'm on top of the world right now.
Yep. Yeah. If you gamble, you can shuffle your 20th to 30th place car up into the top 5 using these different compounds. So it's pretty exciting to be able to shuffle some of these guys up front. I think that's pretty cool. It really adds to the entertainment factor for sure.
I think one of the things too that certainly played into it, and I think helped Logano, was some very timely cautions towards the end that kind of equalized the fact that he didn't have those tires, and the more of those laps under caution he got to run, it was better for him. So I think it's like every race is going to unfold differently. Imagine if there was no cautions in the third stage, Logano would have been hosed, right? I mean, he would have just absolutely fell like a rock because he's stuck
Right.
out there.
Right.
So it adds an element of unknown to every race if you do that.
Yeah, the cautions definitely mess up everything. I'm more of a green flag guy in the sim world myself, so these cautions can either go your way, help you out immensely, or you end up like Byron in who was that? Elliott, a couple of those Hendrick cars late in the race got the caution that they weren't looking for, had to pit under green, but then the caution came out. So it can go either way, yeah. And with the tire compounds makes it even more confusing of who's what and who's where.
Yeah, speaking of Elliott, it was interesting race for him too. Like he started 6th and just was not competitive. Saved both of his reds for the end, but just he just immediately falls back to 10th and then 12th, and then we're into the second stage and it's like 14th, 16th, 18th, and it's like, what is going on, dude? Like, how do you qualify 6th and then you're that bad in race trim? And then again, just like the last race at the road course, it's like all of a sudden, boom, top 10. Like finished 10th, and you're like, man, okay, so the speed was there, or I'm confused about your tactics, man.
I don't know what it is. Just mad dash to the front, scramble in the last 20 laps or so. I guess that's his plan.
Yeah, I just don't get it. It's like, are you anticipating cautions and not wanting to be in it? It's like, are you driving scared? Or what's the deal? Like, and then, it's go time, so let me go ahead and drop 8 guys in the last 15 laps. Like, well, if you can do that, then get your ass up front. I mean, it's just it's I'm not sure what it is. It's coincidence or something, but the last 2 weeks have been exactly like that, and it's not characteristic of him. So not sure what the deal is.
Yeah, it reminds me in Hamlin's team, their strategy was running the back for super speedways. It kind of reminds me of that. It never works out for you, really. I mean, you could get caught in cautions back there. You might not have the speed to get your scramble at the end, so it's risky. I think it's poor strategy as well. Yeah, if you're fast, get up front, get up there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, go to the front, stay there. It's usually the cleanest until the end.
I'll tell you one driver, freestyle a little bit right here. Josh Berry and the Wood Brothers Ford. They're fast and stayed up front. They kind of stayed with the lead pack strategy, so they never really had tire advantages at any one point. So they were there on pure pace and pure strategy, good decisions, and awesome driving by Josh Berry. Like I really think 4th place finish for them is huge. It's basically a victory. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
so I was really impressed by that drive.
You can't don't sleep on Josh Berry. Remember, there was not too long ago he was very competitive with Junior Motorsports in Xfinity, and he's a guy that didn't really start racing until a little bit later in his career, and he's just a good talent. I shouldn't say later in his career. I should say later in his life. He was a little bit older when he started, but he's very good, and so I would expect, this is a good launching pad for Wood Brothers in that 21 to say, okay, we can be competitive. And I like the call from the box, like, okay, we're competitive this week. Let's not try anything crazy. We don't have to act like a team that shouldn't be here. We're going to do what the leaders are going to do. We're going to race a good solid race and not panic, not let the moment get to you.
And Barry, I think, is in tune with these smaller tracks. Had a very good finish in one of the Hendrick cars at Richmond a few years ago. Got a 2nd place, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, Phoenix probably fits his style. I think he might be a late model guy too. So yeah, of course, these are going to come natural to him. And yeah, very mature driver. He's old, I guess, in the modern sense of professional motorsports. So drivers are getting younger and younger for their quick reflexes and risk-taking abilities.
Yeah, so. All that testosterone running through, and they don't care if they crash; they just go for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, Josh Berry is fun to follow, and I'm happy he's getting his shot at Cup. He definitely deserves to be there.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll have to keep an eye on him going forward. Well, I mean, okay. So ultimately, Christopher Bell gets the win. That's 3 in a row. That's like unheard of. Hasn't happened since 2018. I believe it was Harvick that did it last.
That's right.
Yeah, and so in a Toyota, which I know you love. Yes. But man, he's on fire, you know. And what's crazy about it is when Harvick did it, it was like we went Daytona, and then man, 2018 was probably like Las Vegas Auto Club, something like that. You know what I mean? It was,
yeah.
But Bell did it in Atlanta, and then Circuit of the Americas, and then Phoenix. He did it at everything except for a mile and a half so far. And next we're going to a mile and a half. Is he going to do 4 in a row? Is he going to do it at every single track style that we have?
Oh, if he does get 4 in a row, I think I heard at the end of the broadcast at Phoenix that no one's done 4 in a row since Bill Elliott in the 90s, I think.
In the 90s.
Something like that.
Bill Elliott did it. Yeah,
I'd love to see it. I'm a huge Bell fan. So, I want it to happen. I know he's strong at Las Vegas.
Yeah.
He's had some good finishes there the past few years. So it could absolutely happen. And that would be incredible for his season. And it doesn't matter by the time you get to the second round of the playoffs, though. So
yeah, at this point,
points he gets.
At this point, he's solidly in the playoffs, and this is when the broadcasters and media are all like, "Oh, it's time to take risks. You can do weird things. You can, you know." And for me, if I'm the crew chief or car chief or the owner or anybody that makes decisions for JGR and him, I'm like, nope. We're going to keep doing exactly what we've been doing. Don't come off of the game plan because it's working. I mean, don't change a thing.
And his wins aren't from crazy strategy or anything or taking risk. It's simply because he's got one of the best cars and he's one of the best drivers. So, yeah, he doesn't have to do anything different. I don't even think he needs to be a risk taker. He was also running up front at Daytona. Just the car wouldn't handle pushes very well, but he wrecked out towards the end of that race, but he, you know, if he was there, he might have had a shot at the 500 as well. So it's Bell domination.
He had a shot. He had the car, just couldn't quite make it all work out. And so he's been competitive everywhere. I can't, you know, like, how do you bet against him at this point? But you know, when talking about, you know, Vegas, you can't count out Byron either. He's also been super strong at every track that we've gone to. So these two guys are really showing what they're capable of. Now, Byron is one that I would say over the last 2 seasons has steadily increased his competitiveness. Whereas Bell, maybe I just don't follow them as much, but he's always had the talent, but it's like the whole team is now clicking on all cylinders. And now it's really starting to come together.
I think he's had two in a row Final Four runs, or he finished second in the championship one year, maybe within the last 2 years or so. So yeah, it's all coming together, and he just needs to make sure that he has this kind of speed and competitiveness during key moments in the playoffs, because it doesn't matter how many races you win if you're not performing well in these select few races at the end of the season, you're out. You're not going to have your championship. So it's probably going to go to Logano or Briscoe is still my pick. My chaos pick there. So
yeah, that's true. And the way the playoffs are is like, and this is something that has happened to a lot of drivers, is you start out really strong and then you kind of lose it a little bit mid-season, and then come playoffs you're not peaking. And so that's the only concern I would have, is like, are we peaking too soon here? But what do you do? I mean, you it's just like in racing and at a super speedway, you take the runs when you have them, you know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't like, okay, let's back off so that we can be more. You can't do that.
Right. Yeah. I hope we're not giving Bell the podcaster's curse, because I want to see him succeed. I want a young, like, fast driver to win the championship. He's definitely the future of the sport, and he's one that look out for.
Yeah. And this is like, you know, like I said earlier, this is okay. Now we've started the real season, and you can see that Bell is still strong. It's going to be a little while before we go to a road course, or we're going to have a couple of normal tracks here. And I mean, Bell showed that he's ready. William Byron was competitive. So, I mean, those two guys are still going to be competitive. But who else is going to step in and say, okay, I got to get me a win here early?
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those Hendrick guys. I think Larson needs to win one, and Las Vegas might be a good track for him.
Yeah, he's got a real shot there. I think. I mean, Chase Elliott. I think that team's got to figure out some mid race competitiveness. It's like they can qualify and they can finish, but in the middle of the race, like we're going to sleep here, and they got to figure out that before they can actually get a win. I think.
And yeah, we got Martinsville coming up, so I'd look out for Blaney to maybe snag that win. I think that's my prediction there.
I was gonna say I think that I'm looking at Penske to get a win in Vegas. I'm either Logano or Blaney. I think are going to be like really solid picks if you're a betting man. I think those two guys would definitely, the odds are going to be in their favor. But anything can happen. So
that's right. Oh, I may be going to Martinsville too this year.
Yeah,
got me some here in a few weeks, and I'm only a few hours away, so I may be at that race. I'll be able to give you some insight, what it's like as a spectator over there.
That'll be cool.
Yeah,
I'm sure that'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, anything else on that race?
Well, we had some power steering failures. Looked to be, I know at least Bubba's car had a brake and rotor failure. A few others too. I think Gibbs may have been a brake and rotor failure. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of these power steering issues we've had. It's a recurring next gen mechanical gremlin, I suppose. I know during the broadcast they mentioned, some of these parts are from a single supplier. A lot of these guys who supply parts to these next gen cars have, of course, a monopoly on that, or they're the only ones. And NASCAR is supposed to be the one to look at these pieces and determine if they're good enough for racing. But power steering failures have happened multiple times and across every season we've had with this next gen car. I remember Suarez at the Roval, Keselowski at Coda last week, and that may have contributed to his dehydration problems he had and his cool suit failure. So it's hard on the drivers. I think Reddick had some power steering failure not too long ago. And then now this race, and Reddick also had power steering issues, and he was able to drive the wheels off that thing with no power steering. So good on him. But it's another one of those things about the next gen cars, just, failing to deliver in some ways. These kind of issues. I just don't think we should have power steering issues in 2025.
I don't think we should.
$100,000 race cars.
I also, am not sure that I'm a big fan of the rack and pinion system. Right. I mean, it is a modern day system, yes, but that is on highway vehicles, production vehicles. I'm not sure that it's a system that is inherently strong enough to put up with hours of racing. And if they when this is single sourced like this from NASCAR, if I'm NASCAR, I mean, I gotta believe that we're talking to these people like, hey, what's going on? How many more of these units do we have in production, and what are you doing to fix it? Because you can't have teams out there that are getting taken out of races because of a part that they are required to have. Right. I don't think anybody in NASCAR team wise likes that at all. And I don't think spectators like it when their driver goes out on a mechanical issue out of their control. So it's like from all standpoints, NASCAR has to address it. Now, the brake rotor thing, I do believe there was two cars, and Wallace was one of them, and they kind of tried to play it off on broadcast like the tire failed, and I don't think that's what it was at all. I think it was a brake rotor exploded. But here's the thing, though. I think that's a setup issue more than a component issue, because if we really did have issues, I think we would have seen it more at Coda too, because that's huge, heavy braking tracks. I know they use different brakes, but I don't know if I'm ready to say that the brake rotor issue is not set up and is an actual component problem.
Yeah, I guess my only issue with these brake rotor failures is the violent nature of it happening.
Yeah.
Pieces, chunks flying everywhere. I worry about this from a spectator safety point of view. These chunks are huge. I mean, some of them on broadcast look massive and they're burning hot. I saw one of the officials like grab one with like just a regular
pair of gloves on.
Yeah, no way. He probably burned himself.
Yeah, I don't think he was thinking really. He was just like, oh, no. Debris, I got to pick it up. And he's like, yeah, but that's also probably about 900 degrees right now.
Yeah, it's like bare hands, cast iron in the oven, probably hot. Yeah. So if not hotter. I worry about this as a safety issue. I shared that picture before we got on air here at Gateway of that fan lifting his shirt up, and he had a giant knot on his chest where one of these brake rotors had actually flown through the fence and hit a spectator.
Yeah.
And there's been several other instances of brake failures. Yeah, Gateway, I believe in 2023, 2024, had a lot, multiple, 3 or 4. And then you had Larson at Indy Road Course, totally losing brakes, smashing another car on turn 1 there.
Yeah.
So it's happened several times. It could be an aggressive setup issue. But I at least to know why these things are happening and, keeping parts from flying into the grandstands has been a goal of motorsports. We have tethered tires to these open wheel cars. We have huge penalties for, loose tires on the racetrack in NASCAR. They're suspending crew chiefs for multiple weeks for these infringements. So I think, hot brake rotor flying in the grandstands is a safety issue. And I think it's one at least deserves an examination or a look at.
Should be looked at, yeah. And if it's not a component issue, then the question becomes, in the name of safety, do you need to regulate a bias range that they can even adjust to? Are they putting too much front brake in it because it makes the car drive much better? Okay, well, if it's going to explode, do we have to tell them, hey, you can't do that? I don't know. That's for NASCAR to decide, and we'll kind of keep an eye on it and see if there's any news coming out from it. But
one more thing on this too. If it's a single source supplier issue for this power steering and these brake things, if you were to add a competitor, it might fix some of these quality issues, but then you might end up with a problem where a field that NASCAR is trying to create, keep equal and balanced. Well, you may end up with one supplier who sells premium quality at the, that premium price tag. And then you might have a more affordable brand or part. And then you may have some discrepancies, at least competition wise, based on, who's got the funds to buy the best parts.
Yeah. And then you might have the ones who have the cheaper ones, and they're exploding all the time and causing cautions and changing the outcome of races. And it's sticky. It's like, I don't really like NASCAR providing parts and mandating parts, but I also don't like cars out there on inferior parts. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's kind of a lose-lose for NASCAR. Somebody's gonna be upset either way. They got to do what they got to do. But anyways, so to cap that, great race in Phoenix. That was exciting. Let's move on to this week's SRN Truck Series. Texas Motor Speedway, one of my favorite tracks. It's a home track for me, so it's both local and one of my favorites to race on. I set this up as a night race, thinking that, in the daytime we'd have like Vegas week 2 all over again, right? And it'd be super slick and hard to drive on and cars all over the place. Well, it almost seemed like it was possibly too cool. When I set it up, it was like, all right, we'll do 70 degrees. We'll do like 30% humidity. This is going to be nice and cool. Well, the track temperature at night was also 70, and it seemed like it was too cold. I mean, the trucks from the get were everywhere. We've never had a start like that where it was lap 1 turned to chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, the only issue, I think, as far as grip, if you could survive turn 1, lap 1, or a fresh set of tires, turn 1, you were golden. After that, the
Yeah.
track drove like you were driving a golf cart. Not a golf cart, like a go-kart. So there's so
Yeah.
much grip. Felt like
Yeah.
an open wheel car, you know? So, yeah, but turn 1, lap 1, those cold tires on a cold surface, created some of those early cautions, just over driving on the exit, trying to get ahead of that car. So
Yeah, and
that was the only issue as far as grip.
it wasn't even that it was some of the newer drivers. It was from up front. It was, I mean,
Yep.
especially on that first one, it was everywhere in the field. And some of the later stuff was kind of the bottlenecking, you know what I mean? And then, oh shoot, like I got to try to avoid and anytime on those cold tires you try to turn right to avoid in a corner and then try to get it to turn back, it's not going to happen in those trucks. The back's going to come around, but there's nothing you can do. And it's like, okay, do I hit this guy or do I try to avoid and see if I can keep it from spinning? And
Right.
I mean, you got to try to avoid, and then you end up spinning, and then somebody else hits you, and then the snowball just gets bigger and bigger. So that was unfortunate, and it did seem like the bottom was the preferred line all the way around until about 10 laps in, and then in 10 laps in, it's like, okay, that middle high is now coming in, especially I saw it in 1 and 2. I mean, you were driving, I was broadcasting, so you tell me from the driver's seat how that kind of played out.
I tried to save tires, at least, Texas, if y'all don't know, laps, turns 1 and 2, completely different driving than 3 and 4.
Yeah.
I think it's the nature of that tri-oval. But 1 and 2, it seemed like the bottom line was definitely preferred. Hard to make a pass still, but you could also make the middle. You could make the middle work.
Yeah.
But late in the race, nobody had gone up high enough to really try it out. There are a bunch of marbles up there, so you didn't even want to touch it. It was basically a 1.5 groove window through 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had to do some lifting as the car and tires got older. I found myself just ever so slightly dragging the brake into 1 and 2. But yeah, mostly way down low to medium low, you could get some good runs. And then 3 and 4, I was wide open the whole time, never lifted 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And to make passes, sometimes I would put half a car up on the middle to high lane to get to the outside first, because that would give me the run through the front stretch and into turn 1 and 2 again. So really hard to make a pass though. Sometimes it felt like a parade. But I had speed. I was cutting through the field. I was really happy about it. I don't know if anyone saw, but I don't qualify good, so we're in the very back. And
I think you were on broadcast a few times. We were looking at some progress for sure. And you're right. As that race went on, the marbles up top, like you just couldn't go there. And I don't know that there would have been a ton of speed regardless. It's just not. You don't want to be on the high side of Texas. You just don't.
Yeah.
It's the long way around, and there is a little bit more banking than at some of the 1.5 miles, but for whatever reason, it's just that outside doesn't quite do what it needs to do. And then I feel like because the way the racing was, and because it took 10-15 laps before it's like, all right, I'm really stuck to the track, I can use that kind of extra half to 3/4 of a lane out there, now I'm really singing. About that time is when we get a caution. You couldn't, and the cautions were not like back to back and then long green. It was like 25 lap caution, and then dang, okay, 25 lap caution. It's like they were staggered out to where it was like we never really got to see the end of a tire run.
No, yeah, and the way the tires, the cautions came out was really frustrating for me. I was running about 7th or 8th when one of those bigger cautions came out, and it was during a pit cycle. And I think it's an iRacing thing, but iRacing had put some cars got the wave around, but some didn't. And iRacing left a group of lap down cars in between 6th and 7th place on the track. So one of those restarts, the top 10 was separated by this chunk of about 5 or 6 lap down cars, and everybody's on the same tire. So it created a little bit of a mess and a little bit of disadvantage for people who got caught behind that little pack. But I know it's hard for race control to maybe pick up on those things, maybe drop those cars to the back because they weren't eligible for the wave around. They were actually stuck behind the leaders.
Yeah.
But I think protocol should have been to have those cars go to the rear, but
and
iRacing obviously didn't figure it out.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they didn't.
Yeah.
And I think like from a race controller standpoint, you're like, wait, why is iRacing not doing this? And from a race controller, you're like, wait, what did I miss? I can't can't just send these guys to the back. Like, what's happening? And by that time, it's like, hey, we're going green. It's like, oh shoot.
Yeah. So there's the way the cautions fell. It definitely caused some frustration, I know, for a few drivers. So
we did see though race. There was a couple drivers, and the kind of the driver who was on this that was the most up front was Elijah in the 11. He would kind of off sequence a little bit, where he would, he's like mid pack and everybody would pit and he would stay out. And then it's like, okay, he's doing okay, but he's up front, but he's got older tires, and you just see him kind of start to fade, get pushed outside, start to fade, and you're like, okay, you got up there, and then the thing is, the gamble is it a net gain? Like, am I net gaining here or not? And it was kind of even for him. It was yeah, it wasn't really one way or the other.
I think if you would.
Uh-oh. Like we lost him right there. Hold on, let's get him back. I see him there. I see him in this, not on the camera. Well, that's no good. He may need to reset. We'll see if he can do that, but while we're doing that, I'll get to a chat message. Old penalty halfway through the race. Could have got another few spots. Yeah, maybe, Bobby, you could have. I mean, you still had a decent finish regardless of that. Let me see here. So I just sent him a message, see if he can reset that link. I don't know why it's not showing up on there. See if that works. Can you hear me? Huh. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, he might need to reset it. But anyways, so that the whole thing right there was like just really, really interesting to see these guys going. Josh Highbaugh, actually, brand new in our series, got the pole. Ended up having a problem in the race, and he couldn't really recover from it, unfortunately. So he had some issues there, but we have to. That always happens, you know what I mean? So the foothills guys were really strong. You could see that they a lot of the race, especially early and in the middle, they were definitely, they were running 1, 2, 3, 4. The whole team was, and you could really see that they were going to be dominant. It wasn't really a tire thing. It was about speed, because we didn't get those long runs, and they were just working together to stay as much up front as they possibly could. And so they did a great job during the race. Quick little shout out too to Daniel Cunningham and Matt Grenier. They had great runs, great finishes. They finished 4th and 5th, and they were up 8 or 9 positions from where they started. So good run, good patience from them, staying out of the issues, and it definitely showed out. It helped them a lot when you look at where they end up finishing, the points that they got, because they didn't qualify really great. I'm not sure if a couple of them maybe didn't even, some of them didn't even qualify. Not really sure about that, but have to take a look at that. But yeah, it was a good run for those guys. A lot of guys were able to kind of pick up spots, and just by staying clean, staying out of any of the accidents. Because I want to say we had 4 or 5 cautions, so a little bit more than we're used to in this series, but not not the end of the world. It's common to have cautions, and unfortunately they just didn't. Some of the guys just didn't get that opportunity and had issues, but these guys that did, take advantage of that, worked out really well for them. So in the end of it, Foothills ended up going 1, 2, 3. Jeff Ledford had some issues, didn't finish that great, but yeah, Chris Barker got the win. And Steven Shue gets a late pass on his teammate Chris Phillips, so Steven Shue gets second, and then third went to Chris Phillips, and so that was a really good showing for those guys. Foothills Motorsports did a great job, and so hats off to them. They did great. So yeah, that was that race, and yeah. We'll re-rack it. I'll talk about what we got going on coming up here in a little bit. Let me see real quick if I can get Rick back here. It's so weird because he's in, but I just can't get his camera to show back up for some reason. So unfortunately, we're just going to have to continue here without him for the time being. Let me see if I can just get him. Hold on. And I'm just going to go into Discord, see if I can at least get the voice back. And turn this on. All right, Rick, you got me?
I'm here.
Okay. All right. So we'll just do it this way without video for now. Okay. So I just finished up going through the SRN race and kind of the finishing spots, top 3. Anything else from that race that kind of stood out to you?
Let's see. Yeah, Foothills, great job working together. Steven Shue had a great finish. At one point there were 1, 2, 3, 4. That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, very clean racing. Yeah, we had some green flag pit stops at some point. Yeah, just a ton of fun on my end. Texas is always one of my favorite tracks, so I think it was a great race. But next week is going to be awesome. We're going to Talladega, and I like to think of this as the crown jewel race of any league is your super speedway at Talladega. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's always fun, and it gives an opportunity for some guys that maybe wouldn't otherwise be up there, the opportunity to race up front and get shown, and be seen, and so it'd be good for them. Yeah. So okay, well, let's move on to our GT3 series. So that's our Thursday night. We were at Spa. I think Spa is always a fan and driver favorite. So what did we see? We saw you and Mike Hill going at it again, for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So you guys were racing for second and third, just like last week. Yeah, how was that out there?
So it felt like a 90-minute race with a red flag in the middle is what it felt like. Honestly, after the intense battle after Daytona, I wanted a little bit quieter race, but it didn't quite turn out that way. Of course, I think Mike Hill and I are going to be neck and neck for the rest of the season. I hope so. It's a good experience on my end. But it's been a real pleasure racing around him. If he's listening, a huge shout out to you, Mike Hill, for being such a clean and competitive racer. We were definitely battling for all we were worth out there.
Yeah. Well, of course, if we're going to talk about the battle, we got to talk about the incident. And wow, was it epic! If you didn't see the race, go on YouTube, go to the live, watch back the GT3 from Spa. Dang, Okay, so let me try to set it up for the viewers that haven't seen it. So basically, you and Mike Hill going at it. Okay.
As you
you
do.
you guys are coming through, and there's a lap car. You're in a section where there's really nothing Mike could do because Mike was out front of you. Nothing he could really do to get around in that section. But then when you went to the longer straight before we come back to the start finish, he was trying to work around the lap car. You got to his outside, and then started making. You had a run, made room. You were making gains, and then next thing you know, Mike, puts it in there. We're 3 wide, and nobody lifted. As I would expect. And it ended up being an epic crash through that little kink, and all 3 cars wiped out. I mean, people flying through the air. Just an epic crash. Like, from your seat though, did you even know you were actually 3 wide?
I expected to potentially go 3 wide there. I think that's, if you watch the replay, you see me almost off the track. I didn't want to give any more room, or then we'd open up the conversation. Well, you passed me off the track, so I had to try to keep a tire in at least. But I totally expected Mike Hill to. I left the door wide open because, I wanted us both to get around this lap car and not have it influence our race.
Well, that's what you get for being nice.
Yeah. And keep in mind, this happened, in 2 seconds, so I don't know exactly what was going through my head, but I knew that, I wanted to be out as far as possible in case maybe this lap car didn't, want to be passed.
Or if they make contact, you don't want to be so close that when a bumper turns, it turns into you. So yeah, I get it.
Right. And iRacing, we don't have spotters around the track everywhere like NASCAR does, and also people use different equipment. I mean, we got some guys in VR, we got triple monitors, we got single monitors, we got ultra wide. So, I'm not going to assume that they can see me or know how much room is. So I try to err on caution and leave tons of room. By doing that, I left the door wide open for Mike Hill to bring us 3 wide there. But fair play. I wasn't going to lift. I needed to use this lap car to get enough speed to get around him. I knew maybe I could defend and keep him behind me after that, but I really needed a lap car to help me make the pass. And I saw the opportunity. I had a huge run, so I took it. Never lifted. Found something to do with the run, and
Well, I think it's worth mentioning too that there was, I think, about 7 to 8 minutes left in the race. And so it was go time. There's only 2 to 3. There's 3 laps left, right? So it's like, this is the opportunity. This is the time. You guys went back and forth a couple times throughout the race, and so you just got to. I mean, it's like, okay, it's go time, and that's what ultimately happened. So it was kind of a wild incident. There was a bunch of other single car off tracks, but nothing. We haven't seen anything quite like that in the GT3 series yet. The track itself, it seemed like, had plenty of grip. The new rework in iRacing on Spa has been great. I've been on it a few times. I know you probably had the longest run of anybody that I know, anyways, with a 45-minute race on a single set of tires. And so, did it fall off at the end, or did it still feel pretty good?
No, I had constant grip the whole time. No change really. And I may have made the mistake at Daytona of overdriving those tires in the first stint. So this first stint here at Spa, I really focused on saving those tires because I knew I couldn't change them. So, I wasn't powering out of the turns. I'd try not to slide on the entry to turns, just so, I'd have something hopefully better than my competitors at the end of the race, which I felt like I did. I think towards the end of the race, as the run went on, I had more speed than Mike Hill in front of me. But it wasn't so at the beginning. He was driving away from me there at the beginning. So it was all an effort to save tires, because you can't change in 45 minutes, not on these road tires.
No, it's going to take way too much time, and your competitors aren't going to do it, and you don't have time to make up that time. So you kind of stuck with that. But Yeah, so Dominic Ariata, he gets the pole, he gets the win again. And it was kind of, I was joking with them in the interview, I think, and saying, like the if he wins, I think I said like five. I threw out the number five. If you win five of these, we're gonna have you start from the back so we can watch you, pass some cars. And he's like, yeah, or maybe just invert the field from qualifying. And I'm like, that might be chaos with some of those guys up front. That would definitely shake things up. I don't know. And then in Discord, they a couple of people were talking about, well, let's have a race in the rain. And I thought, okay, well, that might equalize things. But then Dominic was like, yeah, that'd be fun. I'm like, oh wait, maybe he's good in the rain too, so maybe that wouldn't work.
Oh yeah, I think if you're fast in the dry, you're gonna have just as much speed in the rain. Only thing that could happen is, I think if a surprise rainstorm comes, someone who gets the strategy absolutely perfect is gonna be able to close the gap between the rest of the field and Dominic Arietta's there. So I think, yeah, rain would be a fun surprise, but I don't want to know it's happening. I want to go into the race thinking it's going to be all neat and fancy and perfectly sunny, and then have maybe just a sprinkle to cause some chaos. It's like snow down south, shut everything down.
Unfortunately, with iRacing at this point, we can't kind of determine that. It seems like you can put, okay, it's, let's say, a 30% chance of rain, and then you can say, you could go into that session, go into a practice session that has that, and let's say 7 times out of 10, it's just overcast, and then 3 times it's raining from the get-go. But hardly ever, especially in a 45-minute session or race, are you gonna get like, oh, it's just in the middle. It's just, it's like when you do the 12-hour, the 24-hour, then iRacing has like the storms coming through, and there's periods of dry and wet. But on the short term, I just haven't seen that happen yet. So maybe it's something that can be further developed, but we'll see. But I know all the other drivers are trying to think of ways to slow down Dominic, but I think he's just that good. So good, people can learn from him, I guess, if they can hang with him long enough.
Yeah, I'd say at this point, don't worry about beating him, but definitely pay attention to what he's doing. I mean, I think if you have any sort of what's it called, like Garage 61 telemetry data, definitely check that out. If he has his stuff open to the public, look at what he's doing. You can see all his inputs. So watch him around track, and I think the main thing is being smooth. You let the car speak to you. You don't necessarily you don't tell the car what to do. You do what the car allows. I think that's a huge part of GT racing.
Absolutely. So that was it was a fun race all in all. Let's go now to the eNASCAR. They were also road racing in the Coke Series this last race at the Jose Carlos Pace. I didn't realize that they were going to do a sprint and a main, but that ended up being kind of cool. Made it a little exciting.
Yeah, I think they were playing around with some reverse grids with that sprint format. So you qualify the top 10, I think, inverse the grid or something like that. So the top qualifier started. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, I like that format. It's pretty cool. Road courses have a tendency to just, the cars get sorted out as far as speed and then turn into parade laps. So, and that's one way to inject some chaos into the mix, is to have these reverse grid sprint races. It was really cool to go to a different track to somewhere like Interlagos, Sao Paulo, Brazil. I think is a great track and one of the all-time greatest tracks. So it was cool to see eNASCAR at least, shout out to these all-time greatest tracks in the world. So I like seeing it there. It was different.
Yeah, I always think in whatnot that road racing is really fun for me to watch. But I've always noticed that it's hard for broadcasters and like podcasters it's hard to find things to talk about, because you're just there to watch the racing. And
Right.
it's not like an oval track where it's like, oh, 10, 15 laps in, now we're moving to the high side, or the strategy of the pits, and it's just, there's not as much of that in road racing. It's a ton of fun, it's very technical, but there's really one line, and it doesn't change. And so it's hard as a commentator, either live or after the fact, to be like, oh, there's all this stuff to talk about. It's like you just had to see it.
Yeah. Unless there's some drama, like huge incidents and things like that. But yeah, it's yeah.
And
I
this
understand where
race,
you're coming from.
this race,
sure.
both the sprint and the main had like big incidences on lap 1, because as soon as you cross the finish, you go into these S's downhill, and there was just always something going on. I mean, it was like, there was, the first one had a big pile up, the second one was a little bit smaller, but right off the bat in both races, there's like, oh, we got contact, we got issues, cars going around, and so it was always, there was some chaos. But then they get kind of single file and you start to see the spread. And one thing I noticed was that there was the three cars that won the sprint race, that were just a class above. The racing was a lot tighter than some of the endurance races and different races that you see, or may have even been in iRacing. But the 11 of Vicente Salas, he won the sprint race. The 77 of Steven Wilson and the 22 of Bobby Zielinski were like all right with each other. And then there was kind of a gap, and then a whole bunch of other cars right with each other. And so those three guys were really class of the field, and you could tell that they've just put in hours and they've practiced a lot. And that was, it was interesting to see that those guys were that competitive, that quick, but all of them kind of the same.
Yeah, and Wilson was leading Las Vegas the week before until his connection issues. So yeah, I think more and more it's becoming evident that in order to be a top level driver, you need to have the skills on both the oval and the road course. And a driver like Wilson, he's got it all, and he's very competitive. And as NASCAR goes to more road friendly schedules, both the sim side and the real life, you really see these drivers being multidisciplined, having skills for both, and being able to do both, I think, complements the other. There's things you learn from both disciplines that will improve the speed in the other. So it's really exciting to see, NASCAR kind of branch out into these different disciplines. I really enjoy it. I'm always been a road course guy, but
well, we saw in the sprint, Steven Wilson could not get around Vicente Salas at the end. He couldn't get around him. Couldn't make the pass, and of course it's a sprint. Hey, I got it. We got another race to do, but then you saw in the main, Steven Wilson made it a point and was a little bit more aggressive at the beginning, got around him, and then never looked back. And I think that was great strategy, because he knew from the previous race, if I can't do it now, it ain't gonna happen. And so he made it happen, and ultimately gets the win. And it's just a great strategy, great move by him. Just, I mean, knowing the situation and taking full advantage and getting it done.
Yeah, and we saw it in the sprint too. He didn't get around Salas, I think is his name. Didn't get around him, and Salas ended up taking the sprint race. So I think he knew the importance of getting in front early, so that he didn't have to try to make a really difficult pass later. So he got the job done, and he gets the win. And I don't know if you saw during the broadcast, Salas had support by Tony Kanaan.
Yeah, I saw that.
Brazilian IndyCar driver. I think he's an Indy 500 winner.
I think that might be his team owner. I think Tony might be his team owner. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool to see a IndyCar driver with some major victories in that series come out and support the eNASCAR side and sim racing side of motorsports. So it's really exciting to have big names like that, get involved into our world, because you never know, you might join a practice session and Jeremy Mayfield will be there, or Tony Kanaan will be there, or
Yeah.
somebody from TV. So it's always fun to be in part of the same worlds, and it's really
Yeah.
cool.
I don't know if I ever told you, but I did race with Jeremy Mayfield at Homestead before, and
Yeah, me too.
in the the Gen 4 car, right, which is I don't know if it was
Yeah,
ARCA races or if it was the Gen 4, but anyways, it was the car he raced in real life when that was
yeah,
NASCAR's car. That dude is good. So always fun though when you got a name like that. Um,
yeah.
so that race was a lot of fun. Let's talk about what we got coming up. So we talked a little bit about NASCAR going to Vegas. We kind of already talked about what we expect there. I'm expecting Penske to probably pull off a win there if everything goes right. I think getting back to Vegas is going to be good. Mile and a half. Now we've hit every type of track that we're going to have this season, and we'll really start to see. Okay, aside from Bell, who's really going to start standing out here?
Yeah, it's well, right now it's only Bell for me, and maybe a glimmer of Byron.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'd really expect to see a Blaney, continue to shine as he has in the past. Just maybe some bad luck. I will
Yep.
tell you, one driver that's having a horrible time right now is Ty Gibbs. I don't know if you saw that stat during the
Yeah, it's
broadcast, but
bad. Yeah, it's
yeah,
it's not good right now, and they're just in a funk. I'm sure he'll get out
yeah,
of it, and he's got all the supports of JGR, so it should turn around for him. But yeah, it should. So I'm looking forward to just having kind of one of those what you would call a quote unquote normal NASCAR race.
yeah, you're
It
right.
should be fun to see. In SRN, so in our Wednesday night truck series, like we mentioned before, we're going to Talladega, and that's always a wild card. One thing I want to mention about that race that's really kind of cool is that we have our first kind of outside sponsor. The sponsors in the league thus far are kind of the companies that I have, but we have an outside sponsor, and that is High Voltage. They are a northeastern kind of an AC/DC tribute band that tours kind of all around that northwest region. They're from Baltimore, and they're going to be sponsoring the race, and so that's going to be really cool. We're going to have some fun with it. We'll have QR code linked to their website and Facebook, and we have some of their music on board, so we'll play that in the intro. We might play that a little during the race, and just kind of have some fun so those guys, so we can put on a show for them. So hopefully that'll be fun for the drivers and for the viewers as we try not to crash every car out at Talladega.
Yeah, it just adds, like I was saying earlier, as the crown jewel event, it just adds to all that fun just to have a sponsor on board. So really appreciate them coming out. I'm definitely going to run that logo across the hood of my truck. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, they just announced to me a couple days ago that anybody that puts a logo on the windshield banner or anywhere on the car, the top finisher is going to get some free merch from them. So that's cool as well. And then we
There
also
we go.
do have the next two races at Charlotte and Pocono are also going to be sponsored by an outside company. So more information on that to come as it develops. But we are in the works of getting some logos together and stuff like that for those races. So the next three are going to have actual sponsors, which is really exciting from a league owner standpoint. And I think it just speaks to the direction that the league is going, that it is popular enough for those things to happen, and it's doing good.
Well, you know what they say, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
Right.
And that's
Right.
true for both the drivers trying to make their way up through Talladega, but also, the journey that Southern Racing Network has been through, getting started here with season one, and especially all this hard work that you've done, Matt. You're working your ass off, and I know I appreciate it, and I know everyone else appreciates it too. So thank you so much for all of the hustling that you've done to get this league started, get our following. All of this. It's been awesome. It's been an incredible journey, and I can't wait to see where we head next.
Yeah, it should be fun. It's been a ton of work, but it's also been a ton of fun. And I just got to say, I just looked at the numbers this morning too, and people watch this thing back, not only on that day, but there's over 100 views of that race on YouTube, and there's like 275 on Facebook. So that's just a ton of people tuning in, checking it out, watching at least some of the race, right? So it's been cool. It's been good. Our GT3 series is going to Canadian Tire, which we had in the preseason, right? So I'm expecting to see a little bit more competition here as guys are probably going to be a little bit more familiar with the track, having already done a race there.
Yeah, Dominic even hinted at maybe not being as confident going into Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, especially worried about the pace of Austin Longnecker, a very fast driver, especially at Canadian Tire. I think he's got his tracks, and Canadian being one of them. So definitely look out for him. I really hope for some close three-way battling between myself, Mike Hill, and Austin Longnecker. But we don't want to battle too much because we want to track down
you got to get that guy up front. So
we got to go get him.
Wait until the last 7 minutes or so, and then you guys can go after it wherever you land. Right. But but it should be an exciting race. Again, that's on Thursday. And then we got a little bit of time, I think a couple weeks here until the eNASCAR. Their next race is going to be in Richmond, so they're going short tracking. I mean, for me, that's great. I love short track racing, so that's going to be what I'm definitely tuning into. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, Formula Wheels at a short track in the eNASCAR series, so
yeah,
those guys love the Formula Wheels over there.
Yeah, they were cheating. They were cheating on the road course. I saw a couple of driver cams that were definitely paddle shifting, and I'm like, oh, yeah. Cheaters.
We had one driver using the clutch pedal as a brake too, so gotta make do.
Wild. But yeah, so that should be fun. Short track's always good. IMSA has a race coming up this weekend, the Sebring 12, and I'm definitely going to be watching that as well. I think that's going to be a really fun race. A lot of people like that race. I love the more endurance rather than the kind of sprints that they do. So this is going to be a fun race.
Yeah, this is it just continues the endurance racing in Florida here. So I'll try to bring y'all all the coverage of that race as best I can for the next one. The Valkyrie will be making its North American debut after a pretty disastrous outing at Qatar in the World Endurance Championship. But I look forward to seeing that program learn, and hearing that car around the track is exciting. And we'll see if we got the continuation of the rivalry between the Corvettes and the BMWs after the drama of the Daytona 24. So really looking forward to that.
Well, one thing I was going to mention too is the IMSA did a sanctioned test at Sebring, I think, a week and a half ago. And I think Cadillac there was GTPs that I was looking at. Cadillac got the highest, the best speed, but then it was followed by both of the BMWs, and that was both Team RLL, and so they're looking really good there. So maybe they can make a run at the Penske teams in Penske. And the guy wins everything. We've covered that before. Maybe they can make a run at him. Maybe they can knock him off his pedestal for at least Sebring.
Yeah, I'd say the Porsches, the Penske Porsches, are not looking quite as fast as they may have been in 2024. And BMW has definitely improved performance.
Yeah.
The Porsche Penske's at the World Endurance Championship opener in Qatar were also, not the fastest ones on track like you'd expect them to be. Ended up being Ferrari domination. So I think people are figuring out these new prototypes, and everyone's starting to catch up with some of these leaders, like Toyota on the Europe side of things, and here in the U.S. North America side, Porsche Penske domination. So I think we're going to see more competitive at the very front of the field. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yep, I agree. Should be a good race. Well, that's it. That's all we got. Tune in this week on Wednesday and Thursday for our SRN coverage, and then we'll see y'all next Monday for our next podcast.
See you. Thank you. I'll see you next week.